Okay, let's get started. It's Tuesday. I'm at a friend's house. I couldn't make it home in time, so I'm in his backyard borrowing his jacket and actually really enjoying being outside for today's session. It's chilly up here, and yeah, it feels good. So I thought today we would focus on some of the nuts and bolts of sort of the neurobiology of attention and what happens in the brain when we flex our attention or when we try to manage our attention. And I think of it as a little bit of a dance, and I'll explain why in a second here. So neurologically speaking, here's sort of what happens in our brain when we focus our attention and then experience distractions and then refocus our attention again. So first and foremost, if I suggest that we focus on our breath. So we bring that attention inward. The part of our brain that lights up is called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It's this area here. So dorso means, think of like the dorsal fin of a shark, right? So meaning the upper part, and then lateral just means to the side. So if we put someone in an fMRI and ask them to focus on their breath, this is the primary region that lights up, and it lights up because oxygen and glucose rich blood goes to that part of the brain because those neurons need energy in order to do their magical thing that they do. So then we try to sustain this attention for a while, and invariably what happens is distractions kick in. When distractions happen, so those could be other noises, they could be thoughts, they could be, anything that takes us away from that initial focus on our breath. There's all these other parts of the brain that also become perfused, and it shifts away from this dorsolateral area of the prefrontal cortex. Then at some point we become aware of the distraction. Like oftentimes it takes a little bit of time, right? So we're focusing on breath. I'm aware of breath. Suddenly I'm starting to think about lunch and do I want to, or some other distraction. These other parts of the brain get active. And then there is this moment where I notice that, oh, wow, I'm no longer focusing on my breath. That experience is a very distinct experience. And it stimulates this part of our brain called the insula. And the insula is involved in what's called interoception, meaning it's the experience of certain sensations happening on the inside, if you will. So the insula lights up, and that's the cue for us to say, oh, I just became aware of the fact that I'm no longer focusing on my breath. So then I make up my mind and say, well, I want to get back to paying attention to breath. So I'm reorienting my attention. And now we reactivate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And then ideally, we're kind of back to where we started, noticing breath with that intentionality. So this is why I call it a dance, because it's this loop that happens over and over again. And a big part of these meditation practices are becoming aware of this loop as it happens, and realizing that becoming distracted from our initial focus of attention is totally normal. That's just the way the brain works. And ideally we can find some almost like joy or celebration when that insula kicks in and we have that distinct awareness of, oh, I'm now having the experience that my mind was distracted. I now get to choose to bring the attention back to awareness of breath. That's hopefully there can be it's like a mini moment of celebration of the fact that we just noticed that. So this is this loop, and I thought today we'd practice it, but I'm hoping showing you these images of what's actually happening between our ears is a helpful visual. So as you go through this process and notice the distractions and reorient, see if you can, just have some of these images in mind, and there's something pretty amazing and magical that's happening in our brain as we activate this. So let's practice. Let's start by closing our eyes. And bringing the attention to breath, the experience, noticing breath happening. And there's so many parts to breath, starting with cool air entering our nostrils, passing through the nasal cavity and down the throat to the lungs, noticing what happens to the chest and shoulders and belly as breath comes and goes. And my suggestion today is pick one point where you experience breath most acutely or most sort of a predominant sensation. Doesn't matter where, it could be your lungs, your nostrils, but pick one point and now give that your full attention. So, first you focus on that one spot where you experience breath, and we're going to concentrate. Try to maintain that focus over time. And I intentionally gave a long, silent pause there. I want you to see if you notice if or when your mind started to wander. Where did it wander to? Like, what were the thoughts or the images? And then noticing that sensation, that inflection point when you become aware of the fact that your attention is no longer on breath, and just gently return your attention back to the experience of witnessing breath coming and going. So I'll give it some space and be quiet again. But the invitation here is to see if you can notice when the mind inevitably begins to wander, and then notice the sensation of what it's like internally to notice that. Sometimes it happens really quickly, and there's sort of these rapid cycles, and other times it might take a while. Like we can really maintain attention on breath. We can go through several in breaths and out breaths before we notice that the mind has shifted to a different object of attention. And something to notice is that the goal of this kind of meditation is not to be perfect with keeping our attention on breath, but is to get better and better at recognizing that inflection point when the mind has wandered and then being able to flex the attentional muscle to come back to breath. So it's not about being perfect in terms of our concentration. It's about being able to notice and then reactivate the attention in a way of our choosing. And noticing where is your attention in this moment. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really just about noticing the process. In this case, let's focus on some intentional breaths. So let's take a deep breath in through the nose. Long, slow exhale. Really noticing the quality of the exhale, the sensations, the sounds, all the way. And then hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, in through the nose. Long, slow exhale through the mouth. And hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, open your eyes. Going back to the session. Yeah, I think the main takeaway that I'm hoping you have here is so often I'll meet people that I work with and they say, oh, I'm a terrible meditator. I just can't do it. I think what they're referring to is I'm not good at keeping my attention on my my breath or whatever it might be. And so reminding them and saying it's not about doing that really well, it's about improving your ability to notice when the mind has wandered and then be able to redirect it back to where you want it to be. That's really I think the value of that kind of attentional training. Anyway, hope that was helpful.